But now here comes the problem. It is the greatest blessing you could ever hear. It is the greatest problem you could ever hear. And what is it? God is just. You say, well, that's good. I want a just God. I wouldn't want an all-powerful being who is evil. I want a just God. That's good news, Brother Paul. No, it's not, because you're not just. You see, here's the problem. He is a just God. And a just God, the judge of all the earth, will do right. And in doing right, His response to you is rather dreadful. Now, I know that you've heard these evangelists over and over on television. How many times do I hear evangelists get up in the pulpit and say, now the first thing I want all you good people to know is that God, unlike those Puritan preachers of yesterday, God is not an angry God. How many times have you heard that? God is not an angry God. Okay? Let's just see. Go with me to Psalms chapter 7. Verse 11. God is a righteous judge and a God who has indignation every day. In some of your translations, a God who is angry every day. You see, God doesn't need a PR man to make Him politically correct so that people will like Him. The Bible says God is an angry God, and you ought to fall down on your knees in praise that He is. Not only is He an angry God, He is a God who hates. Not only is He an angry God, He is a God who hates. And you say, yes, Brother Paul, you're exactly right. God hates the sin and loves the sinner. Well, that looks good on the back of a Christian t-shirt, but that's not biblical. The Bible does not say that God hates the sin and loves the sinner. The Bible says God hates the sinner. Look in Psalms 5. Just look there for a moment. Psalms 5. Verse 5. The boastful shall not stand before your eyes. You hate all who do iniquity. In another translation, you hate all who do wrong. Now, does it say here that God hates the sin or that God hates the sinner? You say, Brother Paul, but what about John 3:16? It's in the book, God so loved the world. Yes, it's in the book, but so is Psalms 5. But God is merciful and a loving God. What about that? Yes, that's true, and we're going to talk about it, but you can't understand it until you understand the full counsel of God. God is love, but this loving God hates. God is merciful, but He is angry. You see, you just can't take one side of the coin, not just one part of the story, and that's the problem today. As I said this morning, I one time preached one whole sermon one night on the holiness of God. And after the sermon, 3 men walked up to me and said, Brother Paul, we got a real problem with you because you preached an entire sermon on the holiness of God and not once did you mention the love of God. And I said, well, gentlemen, last night I preached on the love of God and not once did I mention the holiness of God and not one of you had a problem with that. Do you see? Dear people, we're always getting a one-sided story. But doesn't the Scriptures tell us that we need the full counsel of God? I'm going to talk about the love of God tonight in a way possibly you've never known it. But in order for you to appreciate the love of God, you've got to understand something. His love is exalted in the same way the stars are exalted by a pitch-black sky. Let me ask you a question. Where did the stars go this afternoon? Did someone put them all in a basket and carry them away? How come when you looked up you didn't see them? Because there was so much light. You could not marvel at their beauty. You could not even see them because there was so much light. In the same way, you cannot see the stars of God's grace and His love with so much light. When preachers tell you that men are so good, the only way to truly appreciate the love of God and the grace of God is to see the pitch dark blackness of man. And when you see the pitch dark blackness of your own heart and then you realize that God moved in love for you, it causes you to fall down on your knees with the greatest esteem and worship God. I have a point to all this madness. I've got to dig a hole and bury you deep. I've got to show you how dark your night and hopeless your situation, so that when I begin to talk about Jesus, you're filled with admiration.